Can one boot do it all? Hey guys, John Zombro here with the Lifetime Athlete and another backcountry performance video, this time for specifically the backcountry hunter, and our consideration coming at this from a physical therapy, biomechanics, ergonomics perspective is, can one boot really do most or all of what you need through a very long season in the backcountry? So I've got some thoughts on that I'd like to share with you today. First of all, in training, I would say in the summertime, a lot of my training might just be done in a lightweight trail running shoe, but that's off the table when we're talking about a performance boot for most of our hunting applications. Then we'd say, what about during the coldest, darkest time of winter, when maybe I'm not moving or covering as many miles as I might normally do, or that might be true for you, then a heavily insulated or pack boot, again, off the table. So we're going to talk about generally the kinds of boots that you're going to use through most of your hunting season. My preference generally is to run a fairly lightweight hiking style boot through the early season, and that might run from August into October for me, where I hunt in the western United States and the northern Rockies primarily. And then later in the year, I'll probably go to a heavier boot, particularly when, excuse me, the snow gets deep. And sometimes the terrain may also get steeper. So this boot is about a 7-inch boot. This one's about a 10. And then when you're starting to think about the all-around boot, we're kind of getting into the middle, and most common in the industry is the 8-inch boot. So I'm going to take these off the table now and share with you a few ideas about the ideal hunting boot if one boot's going to do it all. And first of all, these days, I don't think we even question that we need a waterproof, breathable membrane like Gore-Tex or other proprietary liners that some of the manufacturers have. So that's something that you're going to want to consider. Generally speaking as well, I like to recommend an uninsulated boot for an all-purpose boot. You can sometimes modulate temperature with socks, but I just prefer the uninsulated boot, again, particularly when you're doing quite a bit of moving. Next up, we can think about construction, and you really have two choices. You can go with an all or mostly leather constructed boot, or one that has a mix with synthetic materials included. And there's some, certainly not, I wouldn't even say pros and cons, but some differences between those types of boots. First of all, any all leather boot is generally going to run a bit heavier than will be the one that has mostly synthetics or a mix of synthetics and leather. Also, an interesting consideration is how quickly a boot dries if it does become wet. And so generally speaking, an all leather boot is going to take a bit longer to dry out. That may or may not be a concern for you depending upon where you're hunting. But what I found is, particularly in, let's say, the spring or times when I know I'm going to be doing a lot of water crossings, and no matter how well I've waterproofed my boots or how tightly my gaiters fit, I'll generally run the synthetic boots because they're probably going to get wet, but they will dry faster. That's the trade-off that I use. Instead of trying to stay absolutely dry, I just go with the boot that will dry out as it inevitably gets wetter. One of the big considerations also that you're going to want to think about is the flex rating. And nowadays, most manufacturers will use a rating from 1 to 5, with most of your hunting boots coming in around 2, 3, and 4 as a flex rating. Also, there are some 5s which kind of border on full-on mountaineering style boots. Again, your choice. I'm going to talk about some specifics with that in just a moment. We also want to think about the outsole, and generally most of the manufacturers will use either a proprietary outsole with a lug pattern and a hard, long-wearing rubber compound, or they'll use the Vibram or Vibram, depending on how you like to pronounce it. The midsole, or the portion of the boot, which basically is between the upper, or the rubber end in this case, and the outsole. That's the midsole. So that can be made primarily of either polyurethane or EVA. EVA is a foam. The EVA tends to run a little bit lighter and it gives a softer cushioning feel, but the polyurethane lends itself to more rigidity and stability, even though it feels a bit more firm. And ultimately what this all comes down to is two things. I think that I can sum up very quickly: cost versus value, and also fit. And so I would say that there are two areas that I emphasize a lot for backcountry hunters that I work with, and that's backpacks and boots. Two areas where you just want to try not to economize. Buy the best and cry once. Save up, get the best that you can, and you won't be sorry. Very true with boots, and boots of high quality serve you well and tend to last very long. The other thing that is really important is when we're thinking about fit, it all comes down to you and your personal preferences, but how your foot is shaped. And so the manufacturers will use what's known as a last, and that's the foot shape or the mold around which they build the boots. And it's proprietary to each brand, and some brands, like this Crispy, some brands have even multiple lasts within their product line, but nonetheless, you're going to need to try on numbers of brands until you find that one or several brands that really fits your foot best. Then stay within that brand and select the models that are, fitting some of the descriptions we just talked about. Now, this particular boot is a Crispy Nevada. It's one of their classic boots, and as you can see, it's got some wear to it. I've owned this boot now for, I think, 5 years, and it's got hundreds and hundreds of miles, but it's held up very well, and that's one of the things I'll say. Crispy's not, I don't have any sponsorships or affiliations, and Crispy's not paying me to say this, but a very high quality product. It's lasted and performed impeccably, and I think that's true of many of the major brands. Again, when you find the one that works for you and it's of high quality, you won't be sorry. In fact, these types of boots are probably the only ones that I would consider actually getting resold when the time comes, because again, they are such good products. So a few things about this Crispy model. It's all leather. It's a nubuck leather, and they do recommend that you treat it with the brand specific waterproofing cream that they supply, and I've done that, so I think that's helped to preserve this a bit. 8-inch model. It's got a polyurethane midsole, a flex rating of 3 on the scale, and that's about as stiff as I like to go personally. I more or less prefer a 2. But if I was picking one boot, I would pick something like this. Because of the areas that I hunt, I oftentimes get into more wintry weather through the hunting season. That's why I went with a boot like this. But if you hunt in more arid conditions, maybe in the desert, a synthetic model may be more to your liking. So just want to give you guys a few ideas about boots. If you're just going to go with one boot, definitely think about any of the high quality brands that are in the 8-inch uninsulated versions, and then you can decide how light and flexible and breathable you may want to go versus a little bit more rigidity, durability, and trade that off for the weight. So good luck out there. Thanks for joining me today. I always appreciate you, and until next time, Coach Jay-Z signing out from Lifetime Athlete.